Cross stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse, watching the city pulse with life 40 stories below. 32, he had everything money could buy. A tech empire worth billions, homes on 3 continents, and a face that graced magazine covers. Yet as he held the cream-colored wedding invitation in his trembling hands, he felt utterly hollow. Daniel Pierce, his closest friend from college, was getting married. The golden script mocked him with its elegant request: "Please confirm attendance with guest." Benjamin had built algorithms that could predict human behavior, had revolutionized how the world connected digitally, but he could not solve the simple equation of finding someone who wanted to spend an evening with him for reasons beyond his bank account. His phone buzzed against the marble countertop. "Mr. Cross?" The voice belonged to Aria Winters, his executive assistant of 3 years. Even through the intercom, her voice carried that gentle warmth that somehow made his sterile office feel less cold. "The quarterly reports are ready for your review. Come in," Benjamin called, quickly shoving the invitation into his desk drawer. Aria entered, carrying a leather portfolio, her auburn hair pulled back in its usual professional bun. She wore a simple navy dress that somehow looked elegant on her petite frame. Benjamin had always noticed how she moved with quiet grace, never demanding attention, yet impossible to ignore. "The projections look strong for the next quarter," she began, spreading documents across his glass desk. "Though I did notice some concerning trends in the European markets that might require your attention." Benjamin tried to focus on her words, but his mind kept drifting to the invitation. Aria had been his anchor these past 3 years, the one person who saw him as more than just a walking portfolio. She remembered his coffee preferences, knew when he needed space during stressful negotiations, and had never once asked him for anything beyond her salary. "Mr. Krause, are you all right?" Aria's voice pulled him back to the present. She was studying him with those perceptive brown eyes that seemed to see through every wall he built. "I'm fine," he lied, but his voice cracked slightly. "Just tired." Aria set down her pen and moved closer to his desk. "You've seemed distracted all week. Is everything okay?" The genuine concern in her voice nearly broke him. When was the last time anyone had asked about his well-being without wanting something in return? Benjamin felt an overwhelming urge to tell her everything, about the loneliness that aided him despite being surrounded by people, about how success felt meaningless when you had no one to share it with. Instead, he forced a smile. "Just business pressures. Nothing I can't handle." Aria nodded, but he could see she wasn't convinced. She gathered the documents, preparing to leave, when something made her pause. "Mr. Cross, I know it's not my place, but if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. Not as your employee, just as someone who cares." Her words hit him like a physical blow. Benjamin stared at her, seeing for the first time not just his efficient assistant, but a woman who had quietly become the most important person in his life. The realization terrified him. "Thank you, Aria," he managed. "That means more than you know." After she left, Benjamin pulled out the invitation again. His finger traced the embossed lettering as an idea began to form in his mind. It was crazy, potentially catastrophic for their working relationship. But the alternative was showing up alone to watch his best friend find the happiness that seemed to elude Benjamin completely. The next morning, Benjamin paced his office like a caged animal. He had rehearsed what he would say to Aria a dozen times, but every scenario ended in disaster. What if she said no? What if she said yes, but only out of pity? What if this ruined the one genuine relationship he had left? "Sir?" Aria appeared in his doorway with his morning coffee. "You asked to see me?" "Yes. Please sit down." Benjamin gestured to the chair across from his desk. His heart hammered against his ribs as she settled herself gracefully, hands folded. In her lap. "Aria, I need to ask you something, and I want you to know you can absolutely say no without any consequences to your job." Her eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded for him to continue. Benjamin took a deep breath. "My college friend Daniel is getting married this Saturday. It's going to be a big society event, lots of media attention. I need a date, and I wondered if you might consider accompanying me." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Aria's face revealed nothing, but Benjamin noticed her hands tightened slightly in her lap. "As your date?" she asked carefully. as my friend Benjamin clarified quickly. "I know how it sounds, and I know it's completely inappropriate to ask. But I trust you more than anyone else in my life. You're the only person who sees me as more than just a bank account." Arya was quiet for so long that Benjamin began to panic. He was about to withdraw the request when she spoke. What would it involve exactly? Hope fluttered in Benjamin's chest. "Just one evening. We'd attend the ceremony and reception together, maybe dance a few times to keep up appearances. I'd arrange for a dress, hair, makeup, whatever you need. And after, things would go back to normal between us." Benjamin's heart clenched at the question. Would they? Could they pretend this never happened and return to their professional relationship? Of course. He lied. Nothing would change. Arya stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city skyline. Benjamin watched her reflection in the glass, trying to read her expression. "There are things about me you don't know, Mr. Cross," she said quietly. "My background, my past. If people start digging, asking questions about who I am, it could cause problems." "What kind of problems?" She turned back to face him, and Benjamin saw something vulnerable in her eyes that he had never noticed before. The kind that could hurt your reputation. Benjamin stood and moved closer to her, careful to maintain professional distance. "Arya, I've built my entire career on taking calculated risks. Whatever secrets you think you have, it can't be worse than showing up alone to another wedding while everyone whispers about the lonely billionaire who can't find love." A small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "You really think this is a good idea?" "I think it's probably a terrible idea," Benjamin admitted. "But I also think you're the only person I want beside me when I'm facing a room full of people who see me as a commodity rather than a person." Arya studied his face for a long moment, as if weighing something crucial in her mind. Finally, she nodded. "Okay. I'll be your date to the wedding." Relief flooded through Benjamin so powerfully that his knees nearly buckled. "Really? Really? But I have one condition. Anything. After Saturday night, we never speak of this again. We go back to being boss and employee, nothing more." Benjamin's heart sank at her words, but he forced himself to nod. Agreed. As Arya gathered her things to leave, Benjamin felt a mix of elation and terror. He had gotten what he wanted, but something in her eyes told him this decision would change everything between them, whether they acknowledged it or not. "Arya?" he called as she reached the door. "Yes, thank you. For seeing me as more than just my money." She paused, her hand on the doorframe. "Mr. Cross, you've never been just money to me. I hope someday you'll understand that." After she left, Benjamin slumped into his chair, running his hands through his hair. What had he just done? In trying to solve one problem, he might have created a dozen others. But for the first time in years, he felt genuinely excited about something that had nothing to do with profit margins or market shares. Saturday was only 5 days away, and Benjamin had no idea that those 5 days would change both their lives forever. Arya had secrets that ran deeper than he imagined, and the wedding would force both of them to confront truths they had been avoiding as Benjamin picked up his phone to call his stylist. He wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life, or finally taking the first step towards something real. Either way, there was no turning back now. The die was cast, and Saturday night would reveal whether Benjamin Cross had found his salvation or sealed his doom. The rain drummed against the windows of Benjamin's penthouse as he adjusted his black tuxedo for the third time. The wedding was in 2 hours, and his stomach churned with an anxiety he hadn't felt since his first board meeting. He had arranged for Arya to get ready at the city's most exclusive salon, sparing no expense on her transformation. But now he wondered if he had made a colossal mistake. His phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Can't wait to meet your mystery woman tonight. Mom's been asking about her all week." Benjamin groaned. He had forgotten about Daniel's mother, Helen Pierce, who had been trying to set him up with eligible daughters of her friends for years. Tonight would either silence her, matchmaking attempts, or fuel them to unprecedented levels. The doorbell chimed at exactly 7 o'clock. Benjamin's driver had instructions to bring Arya directly to his penthouse so they could arrive together. He took a deep breath and opened the door, then froze completely. The woman standing before him was Arya, yet not Arya. Her auburn hair cascaded in soft waves over bare shoulders, no longer hidden behind professional restraint. The emerald silk dress he had chosen hugged her curves in ways that made his mouth go dry, while subtle makeup enhanced features he had somehow never truly noticed. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Gone was the careful professional distance. Tonight, they held a confidence and allure that took his breath away. "Is something wrong?" Arya asked, shifting nervously under his stare. Benjamin realized he had been standing there speechless for nearly a minute. "No, you look incredible. Absolutely stunning." A blush crept across her cheeks. "Thank you." The stylists were very thorough. Ga-da-da-da-da-da, as Benjamin helped her into his Bentley. He caught her scent, something floral and intoxicating that was definitely not her usual subtle perfume. Everything about tonight felt different, charged with possibilities he didn't dare name. "Are you nervous?" he asked as they glided through. "Manhattan traffic. Terrified," Arya admitted with a small laugh. "I've never been to anything like this before. What if I say the wrong thing? What if people realize I don't belong there?" Benjamin turned to study her profile in the passing streetlights. "Arya, you belong anywhere you choose to be. You're intelligent, gracious, and genuine. That's rarer than any pedigree." She looked at him with surprise. "You really believe that?" "I've never been more certain of anything." The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel glittered like a fairy tale when they arrived. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across hundreds of guests dressed in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Camera flashes exploded as Benjamin and Arya made their entrance, arm in arm. Benjamin crossed with mystery date. He heard a photographer murmur into his headset. Daniel appeared almost immediately, beaming in his wedding tuxedo. "Ben, you made it." His eyes widened as he took in Arya. "And this must be the famous assistant I've heard so much about." "Arya Winters," she said, extending her hand with poise. That impressed Benjamin. "Daniel Pierce, the lucky groom. I have to say Ben's been holding out on us. You're absolutely radiant." Before Benjamin could respond, Helen Pierce materialized beside her son, her sharp eyes assessing Arya from head to toe. "So you're the one who's been keeping Benjamin so busy he never calls his old friends?" "Mother," Daniel warned quietly. "It's all right," Arya said smoothly. "Mr. Cross is very dedicated to his work. I just try to help him manage his schedule efficiently." "How refreshing," Helen replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "A woman who understands a man's priorities." Benjamin felt Arya tense beside him and placed a protective hand on the small of her back. The gesture sent electricity shooting through both of them. As they moved through the cocktail hour, Benjamin watched Arya navigate conversations with senators, CEOs, and socialites with remarkable grace. She asked thoughtful questions, listened intently, and never once seemed out of place, despite her earlier fears. "She's perfect for you," whispered Catherine Mills, a family friend, as she watched Arya chatting with the bride. "Where did you find her?" "She found me," Benjamin replied truthfully, realizing as he said it how accurate that statement was. During the ceremony, Benjamin found himself studying Arya's profile as she watched Daniel and his bride exchange vows. Something wistful crossed her features, a longing that made Benjamin wonder what dreams she harbored beneath her professional exterior. When the bride and groom kissed, sealing their union, Arya's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Without thinking, Benjamin reached over and squeezed her hand. She looked at him in surprise, then squeezed back, and neither of them let go. The reception began with the traditional first dance, and Benjamin knew the moment of truth had arrived. "Shall we?" he asked, offering Arya his arm. "I should probably warn you," she said as they walked onto the dance floor. "I learned to dance from YouTube videos this week." Benjamin laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. "Then we'll learn together." As the orchestra began a slow waltz, Benjamin pulled Arya into his arms. She fit perfectly against him, her head just reaching his shoulder. They moved together naturally, as if they had been dancing together for years rather than minutes. "You're full of surprises," Benjamin murmured against her ear. "You have no idea," Arya replied, and something in her tone made him pull back to look at her. Before he could ask what she meant, the music changed to something more upbeat. and other couples joined them on the dance floor. The spell of intimacy was broken, but the awareness between them had intensified to an almost unbearable level. As the evening progressed, Benjamin found himself falling deeper under Arya's spell, as she laughed at his jokes, challenged his opinions. About art, when they discussed the gallery pieces displayed around the ballroom, somehow made him feel like the most interesting man in the room. "I need some air," Arya said during a particularly crowded moment when seemingly half of New York's elite had surrounded their table. They stepped onto the hotel's terrace, where the city sparkled below them like scattered diamonds. The night air was cool against their heated skin, and finally, they were alone. "Thank you," Benjamin said quietly. "For what?" "For making tonight bearable, for being here with me, for seeing me as more than just the lonely billionaire everyone whispers about." Arya turned to face him, her expression serious. "Benjamin, there's something I need to tell you." Before she could continue, a voice cut through the night air. Well, if it isn't little Arya Blackwood." They turned to see a man emerging from the shadows of the terrace. He was tall and lean, with dark hair and cold blue eyes that held a predatory gleam. Benjamin immediately disliked him. "Hello, Trevor," Arya said, her voice suddenly flat and lifeless. "It's been what, 5 years? You look good, sweetheart. Success suits you?" Trevor's eyes moved appreciatively over her dress. "Though I have to admit I'm curious about your new name. Winters, wasn't it? It's very creative." Benjamin felt Arya go rigid beside him. "What do you want, Trevor? Is catching up with an old friend? Aren't you going to introduce me to your date?" Trevor extended a hand to Benjamin. "Trevor Blackwood. Arya and I have quite a history together." Benjamin shook the offered hand, reluctantly noting the man's crushing grip and the way his surname matched what he had called Arya, Benjamin Cross. "Oh, I know who you are. The tech king himself." "I have to say I'm impressed, Arya. You always did aim high." "We should go back inside," Arya said quickly, but Trevor stepped into their path. "Not so fast. We have things to discuss, like the little matter of the trust fund you ran off with." Benjamin felt the blood drain from his face. Trust fund. Arya had never mentioned any family money. In fact, she had always seemed to live modestly despite her generous salary. "I didn't steal anything," Arya said quietly. "That money was legally mine. Technically, yes, but morally. Running off in the middle of the night after our engagement party, taking everything and disappearing for 5 years? Trevor's smile was cruel. "That's not very sporting, darling." Benjamin's world tilted. Engagement party? Arya had been engaged to this man. "That wasn't an engagement party," Arya said, her voice growing stronger. "Yeah, that was you trying to sell me to your business. Partners like a prize cow. I heard what you said to them, Trevor. About how marrying me would give you access to my father's connections and money. Business is business, sweetheart. You always were too sentimental." Benjamin had heard enough. "Think you should leave." Trevor laughed. "Protective, isn't he? Tell me, Cross, does your board know you're dating a woman who's using a false identity? Arya Blackwood is worth about $50 million, assuming she hasn't spent it all on her new life. Makes you wonder what she's really after, doesn't it?" The words hit Benjamin like physical blows. False identity. $50 million. Everything he thought he knew about Arya was crumbling around him. "Get out," Benjamin said, his voice deadly quiet. Now, Trevor raised his hands in mock surrender. Fine. But Arya, we're not done. I'll be in touch soon. We have unfinished business." After Trevor disappeared back into the ballroom, Benjamin and Arya stood in tense silence. The fairy tale evening had shattered, leaving only questions and betrayal in its wake. "Benjamin, please let me explain," Arya began. He turned to look at her, this beautiful stranger who had been hiding in plain sight for 3 years. "Is it true? Are you really Arya Blackwood?" She nodded slowly, tears starting to fall. "Yes, but it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" "Because right now, I'm wondering if everything between us has been a lie." "No," Arya said desperately. "My feelings, everything tonight, it's all real. The only thing I lied about was my name and my past." Benjamin laughed bitterly. "Only your entire identity. Tell me, was taking a job as my assistant part of some elaborate scheme? Get close to the lonely billionaire, gain his trust? Then what? Steal company secrets? Stage a harassment lawsuit? Stop it, Arya said, her voice breaking. You know me better than that, do I? Because the woman I thought I knew wouldn't have hidden something this massive for 3 years. Arya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking very small. In her elegant dress, I was running Benjamin, from Trevor, from a life that was suffocating me, from people who only saw dollar signs when they looked at me. Does that sound familiar? Her words cut deep because they did sound familiar, but Benjamin was too hurt and confused to acknowledge the parallel. I need time to think, he said finally. This changes everything. It doesn't have to, Arya whispered. But as Benjamin looked at her, all he could see was another person who had lied to him, who had hidden their true motivations behind a carefully constructed facade, just like everyone else in his life. I think we should go, he said coldly. The ride back to Manhattan was silent, except for the sound of Arya crying quietly in the corner of the back seat. Benjamin stared out the window, his mind racing with implications and betrayals both real and imagined. When they reached Arya's apartment building, she turned to him one last time. Benjamin, please, don't let him poison what we have, what we could have. But Benjamin's heart was already closing, protective walls slamming back into place. I'll see you Monday morning, Miss Blackwood. We'll discuss your employment status then. The formality of his words was like a slap. Arya flinched, then straightened, her shoulders with dignity that impressed him even in his anger. Bye, Benjamin, she said softly, and stepped out into the rain. As the Bentley pulled away, Benjamin caught a glimpse of her in the rearview mirror, standing alone on the sidewalk in her beautiful dress, watching his taillights disappear. Something inside him screamed to turn around, to run back and demand the truth, to fight for whatever this thing between them was. Instead, he pulled out his phone and began researching Arya Blackwood, preparing to learn who the woman he was falling in love with really was. Monday morning arrived like a death sentence. Benjamin sat in his office at 6 a.m. surrounded by printouts and laptop screens displaying everything he had discovered about Arya Blackwood over the weekend. The research had painted a picture that both vindicated and devastated him. Arya Blackwood, daughter of real estate mogul Richard Blackwood, had indeed inherited $53 million upon her father's death 5 years ago. She had been engaged to Trevor Blackwood, her distant cousin, in what appeared to be a merger disguised as a marriage. Then, 3 days before the wedding, she had vanished completely, liquidating her trust fund and disappearing without a trace. What the articles didn't mention. What Benjamin had discovered through private investigators was where that money had gone. Educational scholarships for underprivileged children, anonymous donations to women's shelters, medical bills paid for families facing bankruptcy. Arya had systematically given away her entire inheritance while living on nothing but her modest secretary's salary. Benjamin rubbed his exhausted eyes as Arya entered the office at precisely 8 o'clock. She wore a simple black dress and had pulled her hair back into the familiar professional bun, but he could see the toll the weekend had taken. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usual warm smile was nowhere to be found. Good morning, Mr. Cross, she said formally, setting his coffee on the desk without meeting his eyes. Sit down, Arya, Benjamin said quietly. She remained standing. If you're going to fire me, please just do it quickly. I'm not firing you. I want to understand. Arya's composure cracked slightly. What's to understand? I lied about who I was. I invaded your life under false pretenses. Trevor was right about everything except my motivations. Benjamin stood and walked around his desk to face her. Was he right about the money? You mean the money I supposedly stole? Arya's voice turned bitter. Yes, I took every penny of my inheritance. And I gave every penny away because I never wanted it in the first place. Why didn't you tell me? Arya finally looked up at him, and Benjamin saw years of pain reflected in her eyes. Because I knew exactly what would happen. It's the same thing that's happening right now. You'd look at me differently. You'd wonder if I was using you, if my feelings were real, if I had some hidden agenda. I researched where the money went, Benjamin said softly. Arya's eyes widened in surprise. What? The children's scholarships, the women's shelters, the medical bills? You gave it all away. Tears began streaming down Arya's face. You weren't supposed to find out about that, eh? Benjamin stepped Closer, his anger from Saturday night transforming into something else entirely. Why, Arya? Why give up $50 million to work as my secretary? Because I wanted to earn something that was mine, she whispered. My whole life, everything I had was because of who my father was, or what I was worth on paper. I wanted to know who I could be if I started with nothing. And Trevor? Arya's face hardened. Trevor saw me as a business acquisition. He used to tell his friends that marrying me was like buying a company with excellent assets. The night before our engagement party, I overheard him negotiating with investors about development deals he'd pursue once he had access to my father's connections. Benjamin felt his heart breaking for the woman standing before him. So you ran? What? Ran to New York with nothing but the clothes on my back and a new name. I temped at different companies for 2 years, learning skills, proving to myself that I could survive on my own merit. When the position with your company opened up, I applied as Arya Winters because I wanted the job based on my abilities, not my connections. For 3 years, you've been living on just your salary. It was enough. More than enough. I had everything I needed. Benjamin studied her face, seeing the truth written in every line of exhaustion and determination. What did you need, Arya? Purpose? Work that mattered. And ... she hesitated. And what? She whispered. I needed you, even when I was too scared to admit it. The confession hung between them like a bridge neither dared to cross. Benjamin felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling, but years of betrayal and disappointment held him back. Do I know this isn't just another story? He asked, hating himself for the question. Pain flashed across Arya's features. You don't. You'll have to decide whether you trust me or not. Before Benjamin could respond, his office door burst open. Trevor Blackwood strode in without permission, followed by Benjamin's flustered receptionist. Sorry, Mr. Cross, the receptionist called. He wouldn't wait. It's fine, Jennifer, Benjamin said, his voice deadly calm. Close the door behind you. Trevor looked between Benjamin and Arya with satisfaction. I see you two have been having quite the conversation. I hope Arya filled you in on all the details. What do you want? Benjamin asked. Simple. I want my fiancée back, along with the money she owes me for breach of contract. I was never your fiancée, Arya said firmly, and I don't owe you anything. Trevor pulled out a manila folder and dropped it on Benjamin's desk.
How?
Our engagement. Contract. Signed by both parties. Arya agreed to marry me in exchange for business partnerships that would have been worth millions to both our families. When she ran, those deals fell through. I'm owed compensation. Benjamin picked up the document, scanning the legal language. It was real, binding, and would have essentially made Arya a business asset rather than a wife. This is disgusting, Benjamin said, dropping the papers. It's business, Trevor replied. Something you should understand. Which brings me to my offer. Not interested in any offers from you. You will be. I'll drop all claims against Arya and disappear forever in exchange for a small favor. Despite himself, Benjamin was intrigued. What kind of favor? I'm developing a chain of luxury resorts. I need investors, legitimate ones with sterling reputations. Partner with me, provide $50 million in funding, and Arya is free to play secretary to her heart's content. And if I refuse? Trevor's smile turned predatory. Then I take Arya to court for breach of contract and fraud. The media attention alone would be fascinating. Billionaire secretary revealed as runaway heiress. Your company's stock would suffer, your reputation would be questioned, and Arya would spend years fighting legal battles she can't afford. Benjamin felt rage building in his chest. You're blackmailing us? I'm offering a business solution to a personal problem? Very civilized. Arya stepped forward, her voice steady despite her tears. I'll go with you. Both men turned to stare. At her? What? Benjamin and Trevor said simultaneously. I said, I'll go with you, Trevor. I'll marry you. Honor the original contract. Whatever you want. Just leave Benjamin out of this. Absolutely not, Benjamin said immediately. Arya looked at him with heartbreaking resignation. It's my mess, Benjamin. I won't let you pay for my mistakes. How noble, Trevor said, but Benjamin could see he was surprised by her offer. Though I admit, my terms with Mr. Cross are more appealing now. Benjamin's mind raced through possibilities, calculating risks and outcomes like he would any business. Deal, but this wasn't business. This was about the woman he loved, even if he had been too scared to admit it until now. I have a counteroffer, Benjamin said slowly. I'm listening. Benjamin walked to his safe and withdrew a checkbook. He wrote quickly, then tore off the check and handed it to Trevor. $100 million. Take it and disappear forever. Never contact Arya again. Never speak to the media about any of this and never return to New York. Trevor's eyes widened as he looked at the check. $100 million. More than enough to fund your resort chain and compensate you for your imaginary losses. But it comes with conditions. You sign a non-disclosure agreement, you transfer all rights to that ridiculous engagement contract to me, and you leave this building in the next 5 minutes. Arya gasped. Benjamin, you can't. That's too much money. It's not about the money, Benjamin said, never taking his eyes off Trevor. It's about buying back your freedom. Trevor studied the check, clearly calculating whether to push for more. But $100 million was more than he had ever dreamed of getting. Deal, he said finally. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. My lawyer will draw up the papers, Benjamin corrected. We'll sign them this afternoon, and the check will clear once you're on a plane out of the country. After Trevor left, clutching the check like a winning lottery ticket, Benjamin and Arya stood in silence. The weight of what had just happened settled between them. You just paid $100 million for me, Arya said in disbelief. I paid $100 million for your freedom. It's a difference, Benjamin. I can't accept this. I have to find a way to pay you back. He turned to face her fully, and Arya saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. There is a way. How? Benjamin stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Stay. Not as my employee, not out of obligation, but because you want to. Help me figure out what this thing between us really is. What if it doesn't work? What if we're too different? Then we'll figure that out together. But Arya, I've spent the last 3 years falling in love with a woman who challenges me, who sees past my money to who I really am, who makes me want to be better than I thought possible. That woman is you. Whether your name is Winters or Blackwood. Arya's composure finally broke completely. She collapsed into Benjamin's arms, sobbing against his chest as he held her tightly. I love you too, she whispered. So long, but I was terrified you'd leave once you knew the truth. Benjamin tilted her chin up to look at him. The truth is what makes you beautiful, Arya. Not your money, not your connections. Not your courage to start over, your compassion. For others, your strength to survive. That's the woman I fell in love with. When he kissed her, it was nothing like their careful professional interactions or even their charged moment at the wedding. It was desperate and hungry and full of 3 years of suppressed longing. When they finally broke apart, Arya smiled through her tears. So what happens now? Benjamin glanced at his desk, covered in contracts and reports that suddenly seemed unimportant. Now I think we take the rest of the week off. I know a place in the Hamptons where we can figure out what comes next. Your shareholders won't approve of you disappearing for a week. Let me worry about my shareholders. Right now, I have more important things to focus on. As Benjamin held Arya close, watching the New York skyline through his office windows, he realized that for the first time in his adult life, he felt truly wealthy. Not because of his bank account or his business empire, but because he had found something money couldn't buy, a lum worth fighting for. The lonely billionaire was lonely no more. The runaway heiress had finally found her home. Together, they faced a future filled with possibilities neither had dared to imagine. When their story began with a simple wedding invitation and a desperate request for help, sometimes the greatest treasures came disguised as ordinary moments. And sometimes, the person you needed most had been right beside you all along.